welcome to another deep dive. We always say each one of these is a journey, but this one is particularly special.
Oh, how so?
Well, it's about a question, one that, well, I think a lot of us ask at some point, right?
Mm-hmm.
This question of who am I? It's from an excerpt called he. It's a philosophical piece, really gets you thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, who am I? That's that's one of those big ones, isn't it? Like where do you even start?
Exactly. And this author, they describe it as this feeling that just haunts you, like
Yeah.
like a nagging neighbor you can never get rid of.
I get that. It's not just a thought, right? It's like this deeper yearning.
Yes. They actually compare it to like a scientist searching for the God particle, that
Yeah.
fundamental piece of everything.
Wow. That really paints a picture, doesn't it? Like this intense need to uncover, to understand the very core of your being.
It does. And then there's this part where they talk about like picturing themselves as a baby, just observing the world, totally fresh eyes.
Going back to the very beginning. Before everything gets layered on top.
Exactly. It's like they're trying to capture that pure, unshaped state of being before we even have a sense of self.
It's a powerful idea, right? Like that pure potentiality, before labels, before roles, before the world starts to define who we are.
And there's this amazing part where they describe this feeling of being connected to everything, like literally everything, the sun, the birds, even a little squirrel.
That feeling of oneness with nature, it's something a lot of us crave, I think. That sense of belonging, of being part of something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. And yet then we're brought back down to earth, right? They start talking about how they were given a name, a language, introduced to their caste and their family.
The building blocks of identity.
Mm.
But it raises the question, right? Are these external factors really who we are?
Right. And the author grapples with this. They go on to ask their mother, their sister, even a friend, trying to figure it out. Who am I?
But none of the answers seem to quite fit.
Exactly. Like each one adds a layers, but it's like they're still searching for that core.
It makes you think, right? Like, are we just the sum of all these relationships, or is there something more?
Then there's this part I loved. They talk about getting completely lost in like media, becoming Shaktaman, Ajuba, even Mowgli.
Ah, the power of stories. Especially as children, we get so absorbed, don't we? It's like we become those characters.
Totally. And I was thinking, it's almost like we're trying on identities, seeing what fits, what feels right.
And it makes you wonder, when do we stop performing, When do we find our own voice?
That's such a good point. And it's not just fiction, right? As they get older, it's teachers, friends, partners, like they're being shaped by everyone around them.
It's the power of environment, isn't it? The way we're constantly molded, often without even realizing it.
It's pretty profound. And it leads to this turning point in the excerpt. They have this realization, self. The whole thing, it's being constructed by outside forces, like a game with rules someone else wrote.
Wow. That's powerful. That feeling of being caught in a system.
Yeah.
Not fully in control of your own narrative.
And it leads them to this really striking analogy. They talk about a tree, just existing, growing, not trying to please anyone.
Ah, that's beautiful. The tree, a symbol of authenticity. Just being without the need for external validation.
Exactly. It's such a contrast to how they were feeling,
Yeah.
like a machine, being customized by everyone but themselves.
And even with all this insight, right, there's still this awareness that they're observing the process of self being created, like who's pulling the strings.
It's mind-blowing, right? Even in introspection, there's this question, who is the observer? It's like there's another layer.
It's a question that lingers, doesn't it? Makes you really think about the nature of consciousness, the I that's watching the me unfold.
It's like this excerpt took us from like pure being to this incredibly complex, layered understanding of self, shaped by everything.
It's a fascinating journey, isn't it? And it makes you wonder, if self is constantly being shaped, can we choose to reshape it, like consciously?
That's a great question. And maybe that's where the real power lies. But I think we need a little break to let all this sink in. We'll be back in a bit to continue the deep dive. That whole machine analogy really stuck with me. Being customized by everyone else. Like, Where's the me in all of that?
It's a powerful image, isn't it? It gets at that feeling of like not being fully in control, like you're being molded by these external forces.
Yeah, and it made me think about that part earlier where they were, becoming all those characters. Shaktaman, Ajuba, even Mowgli.
Oh, I see what you mean. It's like even in that search for self, we can get lost in these external narratives.
Exactly, like trying to fit into these pre-made molds
Yeah.
instead of, well, discovering our own shape.
And it makes you wonder how much of that carries over into adulthood, right? It's not like the influences just stop.
Not at all. Like from day one, we're bombarded with messages about, who we should be, how to act, what to believe.
It's that social conditioning, this constant shaping, sometimes without us even realizing it.
So like even when we think we're making our own choices, we might actually be influenced by all these rules we've internalized.
Exactly. And that's why that realization in the excerpt is so important. Becoming aware of those influences, that's the first step.
But okay, if we're always being shaped, does that mean we're trapped? Like, is there any way to, break free from that mold?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And I think the author offers some clues. That image of the tree, remember, just existing, being true to itself.
Yeah, you're saying like connecting with that core part of ourselves, the part that's untouched by all that conditioning.
Precisely. It's not about erasing the past or pretending the influences aren't there. It's about recognizing them and then choosing.
Choosing which ones we want to hold on to, which ones to let go of.
Exactly. But how to do that, that's the tricky part, isn't it?
It can feel a bit overwhelming, to be honest.
Well, it's a process, no easy answers. But the excerpt, I think, points us in the right direction. That question, who am I? That's the starting point.
So, like, really getting to know ourselves.
Deeper level, yeah. Peeling back the layers. What are our values, our passions? What brings us genuine joy? The things that light us up?
It's like becoming more mindful of the stories we're telling ourselves.
Exactly. And then asking, do these stories serve us? Or are they holding us back? That's when we can start to rewrite them.
I like that. It's empowering. This idea that we can actually create new stories.
And that tree analogy, it fits perfectly here. Rooted in our strength, expressing who we truly are, not for anyone else, but for ourselves.
It's a powerful image. But even with all this, the author's still wrestling with that question of who's the observer, like even in the midst of self-discovery.
You're right. It highlights the complexity, doesn't it? This ongoing dance between the self and the world.
That's actually kind of reassuring though, right? It's okay if we don't have all the answers right now.
Absolutely. It's a journey. And I think the author would agree. This excerpt, it's not about giving us the answer. It's about inviting us on that journey.
It's like they're saying, here's what I found. Now go explore your own inner world.
And that's where the real magic lies. That exploration, that curiosity. It's how we discover who we truly are.
It makes you think maybe self isn't something fixed, Maybe something fluid, something we're always creating, recreating.
That's beautifully put. Like, we're artists. And our lives, they're the canvases. We choose the colors, the textures.
I love that. It's so empowering. We're not just like passive recipients of our circumstances. We have a hand in creating our own realities.
And that's a powerful realization, isn't it? To know that we have agency, even in the midst of all those external forces.
It is. And it leads to a whole new set of questions, but I think we'll save those for the next part of our deep dive. Need to give everyone a moment to process, right?
That artist analogy, it's really sticking with me. This idea that we shape our own realities. But then I think about those times when it doesn't feel that way. Like you're stuck,
Yeah. It's not always smooth sailing, is it?
It's like we get it, we have this power, but then life happens. Circumstances, limitations, you name it.
Right. It's like that feeling the author describes being, what was it? Drowned in expectation?
Yes, that's it. Like, you understand the idea of self-creation, but sometimes it feels like you're being pulled in a million different directions.
Exactly. We can see those pressures, societal norms, family, even our own ambitions. But breaking free, well, that's a whole other challenge.
It's like we become our own jailers sometimes. We box ourselves in.
It's that internal struggle, isn't it? Self-sabotage, all those beliefs we carry. I'm not good enough. I'll never succeed.
It's like baggage, weighing us down, holding us back. But the good news is we can unpack that baggage. We can choose to examine those beliefs, see what's helping, what's hurting.
Okay, but how? How do we actually break free from those limitations?
Awareness, that's key. Remember the author's question. Who am I? That's where it starts. Turning inward, reflecting.
It's like Shining a light on those hidden parts of ourselves,
That.
bringing those subconscious beliefs to the surface.
Precisely. And once we see them, we can challenge them. Ask, is this really true? Where did this belief come from? Does it still serve me?
It's about becoming aware of those stories we tell ourselves. And then we get to decide, do we keep telling them or do we write a new story?
Exactly. And you know what image comes to mind? That tree. Stand tall, strong, just being.
Yeah, the tree. It was such a powerful contrast, wasn't it?
Remember how the author described it? Not trying to please anyone, just existing authentically? We can choose to be like that tree too, rooted in our own strength.
That's a great image to hold on to. It brings us back to that final question, though. Who is the observer? Like, even as they're exploring all this, there's still that deeper mystery.
It is a mystery, isn't it? It takes us beyond the roles we play, the stories, the external influences. Like, there's this deeper I watching it all unfold.
I know, right? It's a bit mind-boggling, but it also feels, I don't know, kind of liberating.
It is, and it's something that's fascinated thinkers for ages. But even if we can't grasp it fully, I think we can all connect with that feeling, that sense of there being something more to us than meets the eye.
I definitely can. This whole deep dive, it's really changed how I think about, well, about being human. It's been quite a journey.
It has, from those outside forces to that power we have within, from self-doubt to, well, maybe even a glimpse of something transcendent.
And the biggest takeaway for me, it's an ongoing journey. It's not about finding some perfect, finished self.
Couldn't agree more. It's about exploring, questioning, evolving, embracing the mystery of who we are and who we might become.
Beautifully put. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. But I have a feeling this conversation will continue to unfold in our minds long after we finished recording.
Absolutely. I'll leave you with this thought. What if the true self isn't something we find, but something we create? Something we nurture through our choices, our actions, how we engage with the world.
Something to ponder, for sure. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.